This is episode 2 of Tim and Balthie in Bed. Today I thought I would talk about the Young Turks. So I have been a member of the Young Turks for quite a while. I've sort of got fucking morning hair, it's ridiculous. Since maybe like 2005, so I'm paying them $10 a month. And the thing I like about that is that it really annoys the detractors of the Young Turks that I'm giving them financial support. So that's quite funny. So back in the day, I would watch The Daily Show a lot to get my political news. And that show really made George Bush look like a pile of shit. And just like the stupidest person in the history of the world. But the thing about that was, he actually was a dumb motherfucker. But it was a good source for politics, but it wasn't really broad enough. It didn't cover a wide range of topics, The Daily Show. Mostly just covered the political back and forth. They didn't have a lot of detailed stories about topics that you wouldn't expect to be hearing about. Jesus, this fucking hair. That's when I discovered the Young Turks, and I just found it really interesting because Cenk is very charismatic. Some people might disagree with that characterization, but I found him to be very charismatic. You know, he'd take on a lot of issues, he's a real progressive, like really fighting for things, and I got on board just after Kasparian had joined, and I found her coverage of kind of like pop news stories to be quite tedious and boring, but over time she's become more political herself. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the Young Turks, and it's real good. But recently, there's been heaps of controversy about the Young Turks, because of their fight with Sam Harris, the way they talk about Islam and Muslim issues and cultural things, and a lot of people have started to see them as like apologists for Muslims and blah blah blah. They're regressives and blah, 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 blah. And to me that's a bunch of fucking noise. I don't really give a fucking shit about it. When they talk about police shootings and they say that there's corruption in police departments and black people are being persecuted and all that shit, I don't know why that would make me feel so torn up and so personal about it. Like, oh my god, they're saying a vaguely bad thing about white people. I just think that they just report things as they see it. Now, some people compare the Young Turks to Fox News, and I think that is a fallacious comparison because I think Fox News is significantly worse in every regard, and they're not even honest about the fact that they're just the GOP channel, which is literally how they started. But the Young Turks unabashedly say we are liberals and we are progressives. So they wear it on their sleeves. They say who they are. So I think it's a fallacious comparison. I don't believe that when the Young Turks make mistakes, and they do make mistakes quite often, probably too often, like Cenk fucked up a story where Sarah Palin said that Black Lives Matter aren't peaceful, and he misheard it as people. So then he spent a whole segment, ragging on her for saying that Black Lives Matter aren't people, but he got that completely wrong, and I can't remember seeing a retraction or an apology or anything, and they just make little mistakes like that, which is bad, but I don't believe that it's like Fox News willful. Fox News clearly puts aside the facts for their agenda, whereas I believe the Young Turks have an agenda, and occasionally that fucks up the facts. So it's kind of the other way around. At Fox News, the agenda drives everything, but at the Young Turks, the agenda simply affects things, so they'll report stories differently based on a progressive bias. And me being a progressive, I want them to be as accurate as they possibly can be. But when they're reporting stories accurately, I'm probably also going to agree with their interpretation of the story based on progressive values, and that's fine, that's perfectly normal. It's not like people don't watch news sources that don't in some way confirm some of their biases. It's just the important thing is that it's accurate, obviously. And the Young Turks is sometimes not accurate in the way that they report stories. Sometimes the way they interpret stories is not accurate. I also think Mankiewicz is not good at covering stories about sex. Whenever there's a story about male-female relations, particularly about teachers having sex with students, if a female teacher has sex with a male student, he's always like, yeah, you gotta admit, that'd be pretty cool. Like, that'd be quite awesome. But if it's the other way around and it's a male teacher and a female student, he's like, oh god, that'll be horrible, that's a bad thing. So he's got this strange sexual bias, and he seems like a bit of a doofus when it comes to sexual issues and stuff. Oh, fucking Balthazar's running away. So, although Cenk is a progressive. He's definitely not a feminist. I think he emphasizes with the ideals of feminism, but when it comes to accurately talking about sexual issues, he always just takes the goofiest, least thought out way, or path when it comes to those subjects. So whenever they're going to talk about male-female relations or something like that, I'm like, oh god, here we go, Cenk's going to say something dumb, and he always does. There was also a story where he talked about a girl who put on a play about how she'd been raped, and he totally doubted her story to the extent that he said that she wasn't raped, and he didn't believe her. And so I was like, okay, so there's a bit of rape apology going on with Cenk too. So that's another down point. In terms of people on the Young Turks, there's Ben Mankiewicz, who, he's cool, I like him, but he always asks them to rewind and go back in videos they've already watched, and it gets really annoying. He's always like, can we go back and watch that video we just watched? I'm like, fucking Ben, every single time you play a video, people do that. There's Michael Shure, that's the least substantive criticism ever. There's Michael Shure, who's like the epic politics guy. I think he's a bit moderate for my tastes, and he's always kind of trying to make excuses for conservative or Republican behavior, and he's always like trying to play it down the middle, and he doesn't stand up to Cenk very much either. Cenk sort of rolls all over him. Ben Mankiewicz stands up to Cenk a little bit, but Michael Shure doesn't particularly, and I usually find him to just be a bit milquetoast. There's Anna Kasparian, who she probably lets Cenk roll over a bit too much too, and she seems to agree with Cenk a lot, but she also is quite smart, and she, I like a lot of her political views, and I find her interesting to watch. And then there's Cenk, who has a lot of bluster. Sometimes he doesn't think things through deeply, but overall I think he's quite an entertaining and interesting character, and I have no problem still supporting them. Finally, there was that whole controversy about the Armenian Genocide. I thought that people were giving the Young Turks shit about denying the Armenian Genocide because they just hate the Young Turks and it was unfair. But it turns out in 1992 he wrote an article denying the Armenian Genocide, and then in 2003 or something he wrote an article for Salon where he essentially doubled down and said, yeah, the Armenian Genocide was bullshit. And that was alarming. And I realized, okay, the right-wing trolls and the, true liberal trolls and whoever, and the people who just hate the Young Turks, they've got a fucking point. He did deny the Armenian Genocide. Eventually he wrote a retraction, and in the meantime Anna Kasparian would continually say to critics, they don't care about the Armenian Genocide, they're just using this to attack Cenk. There may be some validity to that, but what he said, he did say that. So he wrote a retraction, and he said, I was wrong to write what I wrote, I don't think that anymore, I've changed and I've grown. And I thought, well, that's fair enough, because he used to be a Republican, and now he is a progressive, so he's changed significantly on many of his views. But of course the detractors were like, nah, it's not good enough. That's not good enough. He has to be on his knees. He has to scream. He has to, he has to beg. And Cenk is not big on retractions or apologies. Sometimes that's a flaw, because sometimes when he makes mistakes, he won't retract or apologize because he believes in quote-unquote strength or whatever. And I think sometimes it's right to do a retraction or an apology. But in the case of the Armenian Genocide thing, he did his apology, and then everyone was like, fuck you, whatever. So it's just like, well, yeah, they don't care. And then eventually he took it down from the website, and then everyone just complained that, oh, his apology's gone, so now obviously he's not sorry. So, people are never going to be satisfied. So in the long term, I think, overall, the Young Turks are an interesting watch. I'm quite amazed by how much, and just to use this word, I use it as a joke, triggering, because I know that a trigger is a real thing if you use it in context and say what it actually is. Like, you were sexually abused as a child, or you were raped, or like some hideous experience. So it's a real trigger. But I'm going to say this as a fake trigger, as the parody version of what a trigger is. It's amazing how much people are triggered by the Young Turks. How they just see Cenk's face and they fucking lose it. And there's entire channels dedicated to attacking Cenk. And I think it's silly, it's ridiculous, because there's nothing about the Young Turks that's anywhere near as toxic as Fox News or a lot of other sources of news. Like fucking, I don't know, Mark Levin, some shit. Creationists, etc. And they always say it's because we want the Young Turks to be better. We want the Young Turks to be what we want it to be. And I think, well, the Young Turks has the right to be what it wants to be, and if you don't fully agree with it, it doesn't make them fucking evil. You can criticize them for not apologizing enough, but, you know, they are a progressive news source, and they do reflect progressive values, and some people don't like those, and they should admit they're a bit more conservative than they pretend that they are, especially on cultural issues. And, yeah, that's it. I'm going to continue giving them some money, and I hope Michael Shure challenges Cenk again. More, because I don't know if he ever has. Oh, Jimmy Dore, yeah. I don't really care for Jimmy Dore's comedy. I don't think he's that funny, but sometimes he's got interesting commentary. But I will say I've never seen him disagree with Cenk, ever. So I guess they disagree on something, but I've never seen it. Anyways. That's part 2, and also here's fucking Balthie, who abandoned me. You fucking left the video, Balthie. You son of a bitch. Alright. Thank you. Look at this fucking shit.